Most people forget, but 2008 was the first time March Madness actually got it perfect. All four number one seeds, all in the Final Four. Kansas, Memphis, UCLA, North Carolina. Every top seed survived the chaos of the tournament. All led by future NBA stars, each with their unique storylines. Where it ultimately came down to an unforgettable championship game. This is the story of the first perfect Final Four in March Madness history and how it almost didn't end the way it should have. The 2008 NCAA tournament started like any other. Brackets being busted, dreams getting crushed, and a few Cinderella stories along the way. Yet against all expectations, the 4-1 seeds marched through their first four games, setting the stage for the historic Final Four. North Carolina came into the tournament as the number one overall seed out of the East region, and they looked every bit the part. Led by stars like Tyler Hansbrough, Wayne Ellington, and Ty Lawson, this was a team with both elite talent and sky-high expectations. This was the most dominant offensive team in the country, and when they got rolling, nobody could keep up. Right from the opening tip, they delivered. In the first two rounds, UNC completely overwhelmed their competition, outscoring opponents 221 to 151, one of the highest combined team totals ever in this opening weekend. It wasn't just winning, it was domination. That momentum carried straight into the Sweet 16 where Washington State stood little chance. North Carolina cruised to a 21-point win, setting up a matchup with 3-seed Louisville for a trip to the Final Four, and this is where their best player took over. If you didn't watch college basketball back then, just know this: Tyler Hansbrough was that guy, the National Player of the Year in 2008 and the engine behind everything UNC did. Through the first three games, he was already averaging nearly 19 points and over 8 rebounds per game. But against Louisville, he just got even better. Hansbrough dropped 28 points and grabbed 13 rebounds, powering North Carolina to an 83-73 win and punching their ticket to the Final Four. With that, the top overall seed had done exactly what they were supposed to: survive and advance. One powerhouse down, 3 more to go to become the first perfect Final Four. Out of the Midwest region was the second number one seed, the Kansas Jayhawks. Led by Brandon Rush and Mario Chalmers, Kansas might have been the most complete team in the entire tournament. They weren't just great on one end of the floor, they were elite on both. A top 25 team in both scoring and defense, all while playing one of the toughest schedules in college basketball. And early on, they looked just as dominant as North Carolina. Through their first 3 games, Kansas rolled through opponents, winning by an average of 19 points and barely being tested on their way to the Elite Eight. But that's when everything changed. Standing in their way was a 10-seed Davidson team, led by a relatively unknown name at the time, Stephen Curry. And this game turned into a battle. Kansas held a slim 30-28 lead at halftime, but in the second half, it became a back-and-forth fight. Every run was answered, every possession mattered. With 12 minutes left, Kansas was up 5. With 9 minutes left, Davidson had flipped it and led by 4. And with just over a minute to go, Kansas clung to a 6-point lead. Then, chaos. Davidson hit a free throw, and Steph Curry drilled a clutch 3 to cut it to a 59-57 game. After a Kansas miss, it left enough time on the clock for one Davidson possession, one chance to complete the Cinderella run. Davidson got a decent look at the buzzer, but it didn't fall. Kansas survived. It wasn't as clean or dominant as their early rounds, but it proved something just as important. They could win when things got messy. And with that, the Jayhawks punched their ticket to the Final Four, joining North Carolina as another 1 seed that had lived up to the hype, setting the stage for the historic field. Our third number 1 seed came out of the South region, the Memphis Tigers. Led by freshman phenom Derrick Rose, Memphis was one of the most exciting teams in the country. Rose averaged 15, 4, and 4, but he wasn't alone. Chris Douglas Roberts led the team in scoring with 18 points per game, giving Memphis a dynamic 1-2 punch. This was the classic John Calipari team, fast, explosive, and nearly impossible to keep up with in the open floor, where these Tigers showed that right away. Memphis opened the tournament with a 24-point win in the round of 64, looking every bit like the team on a mission. But in the round of 32, things got a little iffy. Facing 8-seed Mississippi State, Memphis looked in control early, building a 13-point lead early in the second half, but slowly, the Bulldogs started chipping away. Then before you knew it, it was a 2-point game with just over 6 minutes to play. Even late, with Memphis leading 73-65 and under 30 seconds remaining, it felt like the game was finally over. Fans could relax. Then suddenly, the unthinkable almost happened. Mississippi State stormed back, cutting it to a 3-point game with just 11 seconds left. Memphis did hold on to win 77-74, but for the first time nearly all season, they looked vulnerable. But this moment mattered more than you think, because from that point on, Memphis flipped a switch. In the Sweet 16, they blew out Michigan State by 18. In the Elite 8, they did the same to 2-seed Texas, another 18-point victory. Whatever they learned from that scare, they didn't forget it, and Memphis responded accordingly. With that run, the Tigers secured the 3rd spot in the Final Four, bringing even more star power to what was becoming a historic group. The final number 1 seed came out of the West, the UCLA Bruins. Unlike the other 3 teams, UCLA didn't rely on overwhelming offense. This was a slow, defensive-minded powerhouse, one that controlled games and made every possession difficult. Led by freshman All-American Kevin Love, who averaged a double-double, UCLA had a loaded starting lineup. Guards like Russell Westbrook and Darren Collison, along with wings Josh Shipp and Luke Baamute, made this one of the most impressive starting fives in the country, and their defense showed up immediately in record-breaking fashion. In the round of 64, UCLA held Mississippi Valley State to just 29 points in a 70-29 win, the lowest scoring total in a game for a team in the shot clock era in the NCAA tournament. That was a statement. But like Memphis, their second game brought a little scare. Facing 9-seed Texas A&M, UCLA found themselves trailing 29-26 at halftime and still down 45-43 with just 4 minutes remaining, where the game slowed to a grinding battle. With just under a minute to play, UCLA took a 2-point lead, but just seconds later, Texas A&M answered to tie the game at 49. That's when Darren Collison took over. He drove in for a clutch go-ahead layup, and on the other end on A&M's final possession, he helped disrupt A&M's final shot attempt to seal the victory. UCLA survived their round of 32 game. In the Sweet 16, they handled Cinderella Western Kentucky with an 88-78 score. Then in the Elite 8, they dominated 3-seed Xavier in a 19-point rout. That early scare didn't seem to shake these Bruins as UCLA secured the final spot in this historic Final Four, the last piece of the puzzle that now featured 4 number 1 seeds, each with a completely different identity, all chasing the same championship. After all 4 teams' journeys, we finally arrived at the Final Four. It was everything you'd expect on paper: North Carolina vs. Kansas and Memphis vs. UCLA. 4 number 1 seeds, 4 powerhouse programs, a historic stage. But the games themselves, yeah, they didn't quite live up to the hype. Kansas took control early against North Carolina and never looked back, winning by 18. The Jayhawks didn't trail for a single second, while UNC struggled offensively, shooting just 36% from the field. The other semifinal told a similar story. Memphis handled UCLA from start to finish, only trailing once and winning by 15. The Bruins shot 38% on their field goals, and like North Carolina, they could never really find their rhythm. 2 dominant wins, no real drama. A bit of a letdown considering how stacked and star-studded this Final Four really was. But in a way, it set the stage perfectly. Because while the semifinals didn't deliver, the national championship would become the moment that defined the entire tournament. Kansas vs. Memphis, Calipari vs. Self, one of the tournament's most complete teams versus one of the tournament's most explosive. And for the full 40 minutes, we had no idea who this champion was going to be, because this game was a definition of a back and forth battle. In the first half, Kentucky led for 7 minutes 37 seconds, and Memphis led for 6 minutes 51 seconds. With Kansas leading 33-28 at halftime, this was the first second half deficit that Memphis faced in the entire tournament. Memphis scored the first 5 points of the second half to tie the score at 33 with 18:57 left. Then fast forward to 2:11 in regulation, and Memphis had created a sizable lead of 9 points, 60-51. Kansas then strategically fouled Memphis, who were an extremely poor free throw shooting team all season, which missed 4 of their final 5 free throws in regulation. Kansas scored 12 points in the final 2 minutes. During that stretch, Kansas made 100% of their shots, going 4 for 4 from the field and 2 for 2 from the free throw line. Where on Memphis's only made free throw of the 5, it made it a 63-60 game with 10 seconds. On Kansas's final possession, where Memphis probably should have fouled, the ball found Mario Chalmers, who had a 3-point basket with 2.1 seconds remaining to tie the game at 63, sending it to overtime. However, in overtime, Kansas kept on the gas as they scored the first 6 points en route to a final 75-68 win, an all-time classic to end the first perfect Final Four. 2008 gave us something special that March Madness had never seen before, a perfect Final Four, with all 4 number 1 seeds surviving the chaos. In the end, it all came down to a single unforgettable championship game where Kansas pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in tournament history. That Final Four may not be alone as the only perfect one now, but its legacy and the drama it produced will live on forever. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, the subscribe button, and hitting the bell notifications. Thank you.